Okay. All right. Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I personally pay respects to the Turrbal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I grew up on in Boondall, Brisbane, North Side. So for those who don't know me, my name is Caitlin and I'm from the Queensland Government's Mentoring for Growth program. So this program provides eligible businesses free access to business mentors who provide food for thought, insights and suggestions around the challenges and the opportunities a business owner may be facing. So I'm quite excited to facilitate today's session for you today on employer obligations, and we're lucky enough to have 4 of our wonderful mentors here today to help us through it. Firstly, we'll hear from Graham, who will discuss wages, staff records and compliance. Secondly, Slaven will provide us some insights around workplace health and safety, code of conduct and insurances. Next, we'll hear from our first Tanya, who will cover staff retention, professional development and training. And last but not least, our second Tanya, who will finish us off with the importance of culture and values. And now there will be an opportunity for questions at the end of the session. So as you have your questions, please pop them in the Q&A function and we'll work towards answering them at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Graham. Thank you so much, Graham.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, thank you. I just want to start off. I've got 8 points I need to cover very quickly because wages and payment is a very critical area that a lot of small businesses get wrong or get caught in. So I just want to say to you that paying staff is a critical component of your attracting and retaining staff strategy. And I want to quickly cover what you need to do in 8 areas. They're all interrelated and they're also related to the other 3 speakers as well. The starting point is you need to identify and understand what the minimum employment standards, including pay and wages, apply to your business or industry. It doesn't matter whether you're a not-for-profit or for-profit, large or small. Even if you already employ staff, permanent, part-time or casual, you must gain this understanding to protect yourself and to attract and retain the right staff. If you don't get this right, you could lose staff. And more importantly, I don't want to scare you, you could be prosecuted under legislation. So it's a critical area. First of all, I'd like to suggest to you, the starting point is what legislation and industry awards apply and what are your obligations under these and what are the minimum employment standards do they define? Now, I can't cover all that in 5 minutes, but I've given you a summary. But first of all, the legislation in Queensland for all businesses other than local government, state government and agencies like Parks and Gardens and Emergency must meet the Fair Work Act and regulations, which is a federal piece of legislation. They must also meet the National Employment Standard, which consists of 11 standards that define the minimum employment standards required. And you must also provide that to all staff when they first start with you. Then there is also the National Industry Awards that apply to your particular industry, whatever it may be, hospitality, training. How do you find out these? We'll go into that shortly. For local government, if you happen to be part of a local government organisation or a Parks and Gardens, the Industrial Relations Act and regulations apply to you, but there's also a Queensland employment standards as well that you must understand, and then there's state awards that are related to those. All of this is available on the government website, the federal one under Fair Work and under the state government. These define the minimum hourly pay rate, how overtime kicks in and when, the minimum hours, for example, 38-hour week, entitlements, including sick leave, annual leave, parental leave, etc. The awards also define the hourly rate by classification. For example, the clerical award has 4 levels. One where you're basically just starting as a clerk, through to level 4 where you're supervising and making decisions and doing a whole range of stuff. Those hourly rates vary. In actual fact, you can actually pay your staff more if you want to, but you must pay them the minimum, which is laid down. It also must be equitable, irrespective of who they are, male, female, immigrant. If they're doing the same work with the same responsibilities, and they must receive the same pay rate. You can't discriminate against them, because that's also in breach of another couple of pieces of legislation. When initially employing, there's key documents that you require, and this is where a lot of employers are unaware of. They are, you must provide to them in writing what their hourly rate will be, what award they work under for their job, and how will they be paid, weekly, fortnightly, etc. A copy of the National Employment Standard must also be given to them. And then you must clearly define for them what will their duties be or responsibilities, what are they accountable for, which is usually put in a position description. You can call it something else, but doesn't matter. And then you need to define what will be their employment conditions. The next one is how to pay correctly. A lot of organisations don't understand this, but you need to establish timesheets, whether it be manual or digital. It doesn't matter. The timesheet is critical. This is where the staff, irrespective of where they are, they can be working remotely or wherever, they must complete that each day. And it must show when they started work, when they had their mandatory rest breaks every 2 hours, they should have a rest break, normally morning tea, afternoon tea, and then lunch. The small rest breaks are paid for, but the lunch break is not. And when they finish, but the critical thing is they just don't submit it. You must check and verify what they've put in with them and agree to that. Then when you pay them, you must produce a pay slip defining the hours they got paid, was there overtime, what allowances, all of that should be in a pay slip. And that must be given to them. The next thing you need to be aware of is holiday and sick leave pay. They're entitled to a minimum of 4 weeks per year. They can't take that until 12 months after they first start with you, but it's based on their ordinary hours of work per week. Part-time are also entitled to this, but it's pro rata. Full-time employees are entitled up to 10 days sick leave per year based on their ordinary hours of work. Now, what does this mean for you? A lot of small employers are usually cash strapped. I recommend that you put that money aside per employee so that you've got it when they are due. For example, I had a small business. I didn't realise that 11 months after I started, I didn't have enough cash to pay my staff their annual leave when it fell due. So I had to do a quick, looking for it. So it can get you caught. It's the same with the sick leave. You can put it into a bank account where it's generating extra, interest, but please think about that. Next one is superannuation. It's currently 10.5%. It is going to go up to 12% by, I think it's 2025. But once again, this has to be deposited into their super account on a regular basis. And I'd suggest also you keep that money aside so it's there when you have to do it. If you don't, you get into problems with the tax office. It's based on their ordinary time earnings. And if you're not sure what that is, it's basically, their 38-hour week or what they normally work as per the agreement. And there's definitions available on the websites, which I'll talk about in a minute. The next thing you need to think about is monitoring changes in the awards. Often the awards are changed sometimes yearly, sometimes every 4 years. But my suggestion is you look at them every year At the same time, when you do a performance review, probably around July, August each year, just check to see whether there's been any changes. And if there is any changes, then you need to catch up. If it came in 6 months before you did the review, then you owe back pay. But if it comes in, when you've done the review, then you're in front. My suggestion is you do that with the staff as part of their performance review, so they have some ownership and they can see that you're open and not hiding things from them. Any review you do, you must maintain a record of it. And when you make the change to their hourly rate, then you've got to issue a new document saying this is your new hourly rate, and when will that come in back, into effect? And if you've got to pay back pay, how much that is. All of this will protect you down the track should an employee try to claim that you didn't pay him correctly. And I've seen a lot of cases where, the bush lawyers have got to an employer, they spend their time, they go to Fair Work says yes, and then the poor employer has got to spend all this time justifying it. And if you haven't got records, it makes it very, very hard to just, I've been involved with a few mentoring on that side. Last but not least, I encourage you to go onto the website. I did a web search over the weekend just to check and verify. The Fair Work website has a lot of information there. Yes, it can be confusing. Yes, there's some tools, but if you just scan it without getting lost in it, it will give you some very good guidance. Last but not least, be very careful of a lot of the organisations out there offering HR advice and pay. A lot of them are offering generic stuff and are not applying it to your particular industry. So please check them out. Check their qualifications, check their capability, get references about them. There's some damn good ones out there, but there's an awful lot out there, fly-by-nighters, just getting paid, walking away, and they don't get prosecuted. It's you that gets prosecuted. So I hope I've given you some food for thought in my 5 minutes, and down the track, if there's any questions, please ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graham. Wonderful insights there. And we have received a couple of questions. So thank you for those, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. All right, Slaven, over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. Some really good insight, Graham. I was taking some notes myself, so thank you. So for me, I'm covering 3 areas. There's a workplace health and safety, code of conduct, and insurance. Each of those are quite a big area, so I don't want to overwhelm you. So hopefully you're going to walk away 1 or 2 things to think about or explore. So what I thought to cover in each of those areas, 3 sections. So why do we need it? Some key obligations, and also share some resources that will potentially could help you put those into practices, explore, investigate, or whatever that might work for you. So talking about workplace health and safety, it's obviously important. There are 2 particular reasons we need to do it. Obviously, we need to look after employees, but there are also some legal and financial implications that we need to take into consideration. So some key obligations that when we're implementing workplace and safety, so we need to provide safe workplace, a place that is adequate, for example, proper lighting, ventilation, etc., proper offices. Part of workplace health and safety, we all heard about mental health, so that's really important, include in this area. So it's not set and forget, so it's a very important. Times are changing, work conditions are changing, regulations are changing as well. It's important to conduct regular risk assessment of any hazards and implement a system where it's not just up to employees to look after this, but how employees can be part of this review in a journey. And also important to provide training to the staff, to employees, what they need to do, how they need to do it. In regards to regulations, so some of the injuries and incidents need to be recorded properly. So if you don't have so area where that record, you might need to legally required to notify even Workplace Health and Safety Queensland. So really important to investigate that area. Some resources that might be helpful at points. There's, like, as Graham mentioned, there's so much on the website available. Sometimes it's easy to get lost. Business Queensland Workplace Health and Safety has a lot about licenses and laws in Queensland, which are really important. They might be slightly different to some other states. WorkCover Queensland is a statutory body for workplace health and safety here in Queensland. So they do have plenty of resources, information, and even some assistance. Safe Work Australia has actually a really good search tool. So you just select the area you want to look at it rather than searching through the whole website. So I can't recommend this one high enough. And the last one, business.gov.au, health and safety. There's some resources about legal requirements, including mental health. So it's all provided there. So obviously quite a few resources on Queensland and federal. That it's always good to check how anything in regards to workplace health and safety, how that applies in locally in Queensland. In regards to code of conduct, kind of same approach. Why do we need it? Some key obligation and some resources. So we obviously need code of conduct to provide a respectful, inclusive, and ethical workplace, and place where is enhancing productivity and employee morale. So there are professional standards for businesses and employees. When we talk about code of conduct, they're mandatory code of conduct and voluntary. So mandatories are provided as a standard for the industry, and it's very easy to find them. If you have a look through those, is under Competition and Consumer Act 2010. So those are mandatory. They might be different to different industries. And there are voluntary codes. I'm not saying that they're not important, they're equally important, but they're mainly industry driven. So industry provide how we, I suppose, behave in the workplace, some requirements, some interaction with industry, consumer needs, etc. Obviously, communication training in this area is very important, and reinforcing some of the code of conduct that are implemented. It's not just set and forget a document, something to look into. Some of the resources that might be helpful for those of you who are looking to investigate this further, I find that ACCC, Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, has all mandatory codes and also some information about voluntary codes as well. A really good place to investigate. But also, if you're looking some code of conduct, some examples, Public Service Code of Conduct for Government, for Queensland Government, has really good examples of code of conduct if you're looking to implement something in your workplace. And the last area, insurance. I'm just very mindful to run through this quickly as well. Obviously, we need it to mitigate risk and financial protection. It's one of the things that we're paying, and we hope that we never are going to use it. But so in regards to obligations, so there are a number of different insurances, and this is a very important area. I'm obviously not advised to provide, not accredited to provide advice. I give you some insight, and I provide some resources where to go if you need advice in this space. So public liability insurance, professional indemnity insurance, property insurance, worker compensation insurance, cyber insurance. It's really important to consider, particularly nowadays. So some areas that might be useful to investigate in this, if you're not sure which insurers to use, Insurance Council of Australia has really good resources about insurances. Some local insurance brokers, so they're a really good place to go. It can be overwhelming because some of the insurance providers might not cover the same area that are specific to your industry. So business.gov.au advisor I find it's a really useful place to go. So And you can find an advisor that can advise on legal, insurance, or anything in regards to business that you need. So a really good place to go if you're not sure which insurance you need. So that's all from me. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you so much. Lots of insights there. And for those who've already started asking about all those wonderful links that were just mentioned, I will include them all in a wrap-up email after this session. So thank you so much. First, Tanya, over to you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Graham and Slaven as well, and everyone that's jumped on. I am also a business owner, as we all are, so I understand how busy it is, especially Monday morning. Look, just really going to cover off over staff retention, development and training. I guess in my role in recruitment, I do see it a lot, probably more so with my clients around staff retention. And I have to say it starts from before you hire. And Graham and Slaven have spoken about things that we must do before we hire. And it's important that we get those things crossed away in terms of retention. What I do find as well is when people are hiring, they're not clear in what they're looking for or what the role is actually doing in your business. Another thing that I do find as well is people hire someone and then get them to do a bit more than what they're supposed to be doing in terms of their duties. So we see one person doing 2 or 3 roles. This can lead to burnout as well. And also when they come to probation, what are they actually getting, I guess, performanced by? Is it by the role that they were hired for? Or is it by the role that they're actually doing? And I do find, look, as part of, looking at what you're doing when you are hiring, being really clear, setting out position descriptions. I think Graham mentioned that before, but also KPIs too. As business owners, we get really busy, so we don't always have that time to do one-on-ones, but that's really important. And whether that's once a fortnight or once a week, really to understand where the training gaps are with your team members as well. And this obviously leads into professional development and training, which Slaven also spoke about. So with sole traders, when you're making your first hire, which for me, I think is always really exciting because you're getting extra help. It's, I guess, for what I do say to clients is have a really clear list of what you need that person to do. Where are the gaps that they can help you? And when you are hiring, are you following a thorough interview process and hiring process to go, okay, they have all the skills and experience that I need, or they can develop that through my own training and perhaps external training. And then obviously leading back to those one-on-ones, are we catching up with them enough to go, hey, are you feeling supported? Do you have enough experience? Do you have enough training and also resources? Look, professional development and training can come in forms of someone in your team. It might be someone that's moving up in their role and they're providing a handover. Hopefully, if someone is leaving, they have left a handover for you as well. A lot of the companies that work in Queensland do need professional training outside of their business. So that might be for technical roles or specific roles, perhaps related to construction or mining. But I think in terms of professional development within the business, what I always say to clients when they've done their first hire, at 6 months, sit down with that person and go, hey, help me craft out your position description, even more so where has it evolved? And also put together, the skills and duties that you're doing each day, and let's create some sort of template or manual so that the next person that comes in has something to work to as well. Find that really handy too. And not to digress too much, but I always talk to businesses about the Macca's model. So their model is that any person can go into their business, pick up a manual and be able to work in each particular area in the restaurant purely from the instruction that's in that manual. And it does seem like it's quite time consuming, but if you start it at the beginning and you get that new person to help you, it makes them feel good too, gives them a sense of responsibility as well. And look, I think even a buddy system, we are finding it hard, I guess, to find really skilled candidates that are wanting to work in the office, that are, really comfortable with the pay rate that you're paying above the award or at least the minimum. And, making sure that we retain them so they're not getting headhunted or going somewhere else. So I think it's important that when you are having people that are starting in your business, making sure that they feel that they're supported, and that could be through a buddy person. We're seeing clients hire juniors and training them up, and that senior has that sense of responsibility too. I guess to kind of cover it off, and Caitlin's really good, she always sends through a bit of an overview anyway. but just understand the role that you're hiring for and write a thorough PD, have a really good interview process as well. Is the person that's in the role now that you're thinking about, are they skilled? Are they supported? Do they have the resources to actually do their role well? And are you making the time in a one-on-one to understand where the training gaps are? Because it could be something really simple. And, you know, can someone in your team provide training as well? So in terms of professional development, a lot of us are SMEs, but, you know, having a really clear outline of what career progression looks like. We have a lot of HR consultants here in the M4G network, and also ones that that sit external that can help you through that process too. And I'm sure any of us here are happy to help you with that as well. So I won't go too much into it. The guys have already said heaps of links as well. And more than happy if you guys reach out to me on LinkedIn, we can chat further. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tanya. Okay, last but not least, our second Tanya.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
I'd like to also acknowledge the Drumble people in the Capricorn region, which is where I am, and it's a beautiful day here. So I hope you're all enjoying lovely weather wherever you are in Queensland. Talking about culture and values. So interestingly, and I know historically myself, I always thought of culture as something very separate and different, but there's a lot of overlay between what Graham and Slaven and Tanya have been saying. Our culture is something that we can't take for granted, even though it's often the last thing we think about. It incorporates the things like that psychological safety, that mental well-being that we're starting to hear more and more about. It also impacts on your productivity, the customer experience, innovations that your team are able to come up with, that creativity, and also staff retention. So it really is key, even though it doesn't sound like it's that important. So the kind of culture that ideally you're going to want is one where people feel safe and included, so that they're able to contribute to your business. They're not just showing up, but they actually feel valued, and they're there to help your business succeed. And how you kind of, I guess, to identify what your culture is like is you're looking at things like how we do things, you know, what people say within the business and what people say about your business, you know, how we respond to things, how do we respond to problems, how do we respond in terms of discipline, or in terms of when we actually succeed, are we celebrating, are we recognizing the people who are involved. It's also about what's important to us. So thinking about you know, your values in terms of what's important to you as a business, but how does that play out in the actions and the way that you treat your staff, and how your staff interact with each other and with you? How do they act in meetings? What do their workspaces look like? I know early on in my career, when I was working in a print manufacturer, it was like, you know, the printing area was like the guys' zone, and they had the semi-naked woman on the wall, and, you know, that kind of thing isn't acceptable anymore, because it really is quite territorial. Actually, it's about staking a space. So it's thinking, is this space actually a nice, welcoming space for anyone to come and work? Because you want a culture, changing culture is hard, because it's embedded. It's the stories people tell. You want to try and set it up early on so that it is that sort of safe and inclusive and productive space where people are appreciated. Because when it goes wrong, and I can give you a good example of this, one place I worked at, we had the workshop, and then we had the office space. And the guys from the workshop would come across for training, and there'd always be smoko when they had training. So there'd be the hot sausage rolls and, you know, the snacks and everything else. And this one time they came over and they were a bit late, and the office staff had already eaten all the sausage rolls. And this became a story that they would tell over and over again. When a new person came in, when an apprentice started, it was always like, you can't trust the office people. They always eat the sausage rolls before we get there. And this actual event happened once. It happened before I started, And when I left 3 years later, they were still telling the same story. And some of the people telling the story weren't there when it actually happened. But that culture of lack of trust was exemplified through this story. And it just was very perpetual. So you trying to think about how can we manage these things all the time. So the kind of things, if you do want to change, if you want things to change in your business in terms of productivity, in terms of is it welcoming and inclusive, do people want to come and stay and work with you, that is about your culture. And your culture is things like, do we feel valued? Are we getting paid well? You know, do we get training and development opportunities? You know, it's, and thinking about everyone in the business. So from, you know, the person who's delivering the mail to the person who might be the you know, your second in command. How is everyone looked after and appreciated, and how are their contributions recognized, and how are they supported and encouraged, and is failure okay? Because no one will trust or be prepared to experiment if they get punished for trying to make things better. I think that's it for me. Happy to take any questions, or again, like Tanya said, reach out on LinkedIn. Happy to be there.
Thanks, Tanya. Okay, so we've already received a few questions, so we might kick us off. And as we go through these, please, attendees, pop your questions in. We find a lot of benefit from these questions and answer sessions. So firstly, Graham, this is in relation to what you covered. If an employee, if you have set hours each week, do they still have to complete a timesheet?
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because irrespective where you got it, there's been a lot of court cases, especially in the hospitality food industry, where they had set hours, people weren't getting their breaks, you know, there's a whole range of stuff that you need to do. So digitally these days, they can do it on their iPhone. There's a whole range of stuff that's available, provided you've got cybersecurity under control.
Mm-hmm.
And their private information is protected. But it's really important. I've been involved with a number of court cases, common law cases, where people have, you know, weren't getting paid right. When I've been mentoring, when I've asked, it could be just 5 minutes here and there.
Yeah.
And it's critical.
Yeah.
Some industries more than others, depending on what they're doing, you know.
Yeah, so it's also adds a protection to you as a business owner, right?
Exactly, because under any legislation, workplace health and safety, whatever it is, you've got to demonstrate you've been duly diligent
Mm-hmm.
in meeting your obligations, and having appropriate records digitally, photographs, whatever available, it can protect you.
Sure.
You know, especially when it goes to court. You know, I've helped get decisions overturned with some government departments when it's gone to court, because I've been able to track down the evidence that the people weren't asked for originally.
Yep, wonderful. Okay, well, we've got you, Graham. Also, another question related to what you in relation to what you covered. How do you determine what level they are? For example, a year 2 occupational therapist, would they be a level 2? I presume does that make sense to you, Graham?
Yes, if you got most awards, if you read them, they're very good. I've had to refer to them quite regularly, and in there it tells you whether it's level 1, level 2, level 3. It says, what are they expected to be able to do? Are they doing it under supervision, or are they able to do it unsupervised? And that will give the rate where they are. Now, some professional ones may not have it so precise, and then sometimes the professional association is where you go to get get a good guidance on it. But the awards are really good. Yes, they're terrible to read, but when you scan through them, instead of getting lost in the detail, there's some excellent stuff there to be able to distinguish. You know, for example, have I got time to give one example?
Yes.
Right, this was a not-for-profit. I was doing consulting for them and a whole range of stuff, and they had 2 staff in the office where they shared duties. You know, one was doing accounts and one was doing admin, and they were on different rates, and but they wouldn't share. And when you looked at the award at a level 5 that they wanted to go to, they had to have knowledge and be able to give direction in accounts, HR and admin. And when I met with them individually with the CEO and explained that to them, they suddenly realised, hey, we've been wrong, and they backed off. Because one just did not like finance and the other one didn't like the HR side. But there was a big fight going on for over 12 months. It was upsetting the whole office. It was a not-for-profit, community-based organisation. And I used the award rather than my opinion. I just read the stuff out and gave it to them. So I think that gives you an overview. Some professions, like, for example, I used to have up to 13 consultants. When I started with consultants, there was no award for them. And when I rang the industrial commissioner, he said, take the closest award you find that will reflect what you're doing. And would you believe it was the admin award, you know, the Clegler award? But obviously I paid them over that, but at least gave me a breakup of what, you know, to pay.
Gives you a good benchmark. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Graham. Slaven, in regards to some leave loading, can you answer a question for me? The awards have a percentage that you need to pay in addition to their 4 weeks annual leave per year. But I've asked other business owners who have said that they've had no idea about it and haven't been paying it. Have I misinterpreted the award? Are you able to help us there? Slaven?
So, I think Graham might be better to.
Graham, yeah, I was just trying to share the question, love, but Graham, it's back to you if you heard that one.
Yeah, just quickly repeat it again, sorry.
Sure. This person is confused about leave loading. The awards have a percentage that you need to pay in addition to their 4 weeks annual leave per year. But I've asked other business owners who have said they have no idea about it and haven't been paying it. Have I misinterpreted the award?
To answer your question, if the award said it, no, you have not. But
Okay.
you might need to review it, and I'd be more than happy. You can email me the actual award and the wording so I can review it, because sometimes legislation and awards, when you read it in one section without going to the main section, it will give you the wrong interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, casual. I had an employer, he was a truck hire company. His lawyer rang up and said, because of the change to casual employment, you've got to put all your staff on permanent. And I said, no, I don't think that's right. And when I read the award, and because of the nature, their work required, if they didn't have any contracts, they had no work. So I rang the Fair Work Commissioner and he confirmed what I've said. So I had to help them draft a letter to meet the new legislation to say that their staff can be employed casually because of the nature of the business. So sometimes, yes, when you read it, if you look at some writing further down in the award without looking at the overview, it can give you the wrong information.
All righty. Graham, you're a popular man. You're going to get another one. If someone is employed and not told of their award, then audit discovers this, can the worker be prosecuted or would the employer be prosecuted?
Normally, if an inspector comes in, it depends. If they've been called in because an employee has complained to the Fair Work Commissioner or an industrial commissioner, they may prosecute you, but it depends on the circumstances. You may have to pay a fine or you will have to rectify it. But if it's just something that you order the fines, no, provided you've noted the auditor's report and you've actually done action to fix it and you've advised the employee that, you know, there was something wrong and you've now rectified it. And if you have to back pay them, as long as you do all that, then you've more than met the legislation.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Graham. Okay. Let's do, okay. This is probably more around culture. So our second, Tanya, how do you provide a breakdown to staff on how they're valued? It's probably both. How do you provide a breakdown to staff on how they're valued and appreciated? So that would probably roll into a bit of a culture, would you say?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the situation in terms of the kind of work environment you're in, but really, if you think about it, it's about giving feedback. So often we think feedback's only about a negative thing, but it's really about that ongoing conversation that you're having. It's about when something happens, like whether it's good or bad, is that you're having a conversation saying, that was great, being specific about why it was great, or conversely, why there was a problem. It's like, it was really great the way that, you stepped up, you saw there was a customer need, you jumped in, you helped. It just makes such a huge difference. Or it could be, you saw that so-and-so wasn't, managing with everything because of, we just had this big influx. So you jumped in and gave a hand. Those kind of things can be huge. The other thing that, you don't even need a specific situation to just go and say, hi, how you going in the mornings? Going in, knowing everyone's name, just checking in, how are they? Those kind of, casual conversations are the key part of creating a valuable and valued culture, because doesn't have to have, they're coming in because something's happened. It's like, wow, that's our boss. He cares about, or she cares about, who we are, what's going on for us. And, we trust him or her because they care. And that caring is a huge part of it. Tanya, did you have anything to add on that one?
I think it's just being present, right? And very much what Tanya said as well, but you can't really do it with one sweeping brush to go, hey everyone, we feel that, we value and appreciate you. It's what you do every day. And again, like I said before, it's hard because we have businesses and we have meetings and our phones are probably all going off and stuff. And I always say to people, part of retention too, if you start well at the beginning, and that's why you have those one-on-ones. Like, I've had clients that I've dealt with before where I said, when did you have a one-on-one? Oh, we have a team meeting once a week. That's not a one-on-one. It's a sit down where they talk about their grievances and you provide feedback, in all the time that I've interviewed and met clients, candidates always say they're really open to feedback, and clients always say they want someone that will fit in their culture. And then I find that they don't really talk that much. So I think it's just communication. It's like any relationship you have, professional, personal, that's how you build on it. And it's just by starting every day and doing it genuinely too. Because if you're frantic and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's have coffee and cake in the kitchen, and then you get stressed because people are chatting, it's not consistent. So you just have to start small and go from there.
Thanks, Tan. While we're chatting with you, Tan, we've got a question here for you. If a worker has not been given a position description but has asked for one countless times, who could be held accountable for not supplying this? And is there any form of prosecution for this?
I think I'd flick the prosecution thing to Graham, but I think for a PD, you really need to have one. Because how do they know what they're doing? And I think that could be simply, that starts right at the beginning, having a position description about what their role title is, what are the duties that they're expected to do? Because if at 3 months or 6 months, you can't pass them through probation, you also need to sit down with them, or even in performance reviews, to go, hey, these are the actual things that you would be doing day to day, and this is what you need to adhere to. If we keep it too loose, and look, I think it's good structure to provide a position description. There's a lot of free templates online. Again, you can reach out to me too. But I think you probably should have a position description already for their role. Graham, I'm not sure if you can get prosecuted for not having a position description, but it would be depending on whether they're exiting the business or...
Yeah, that's normally when it comes in. But the biggest thing is a PD cannot be generic.
Yeah.
It should not be war and peace. That's where work instructions and manuals come in. It's basically specific to their duty. For example, a client recently, I won't say what they're in, it might distinguish it, but they had a fleet of trucks, and the CEO spoke to me about the supervisor, manager in charge of maintaining the fleet. And I started to pick up warning signs that there may be some other issues there, because they were looking at sacking the person. Anyhow, to cut long story short, they got me in, and my assumption about the individual was, because he was one of these people that wanted to do things right, and when he didn't do it right in his own mind at work, he then mentally, knocked himself around. Then I looked at his PD, and the management team had not sorted out exactly what he's responsible for. there was other people doing stuff that they held him accountable for. Their computer system didn't support him. So we suddenly started to look at their whole system and their culture, because there was other staff in the same boat. So PDs have got to be specific to say, this is your duties, but more importantly, this is what you're accountable for. And this is what the standard we expect you to achieve.
Wonderful. Thanks, Graham. While we're on you as well, if they're a full-time employee and you're paying them above the award, is it appropriate to expect that if they are required to complete their tasks, they may need to go into their own time if not completed? Do you need to pay them for this?
Yes, you do. It's different if they're on a wage. I'm talking about employees. A wage is a different, like a salary, on a salary if you're a manager. But even then, you can't expect a manager to constantly be working excessive hours just to get the work done, because then you've got yourself in breach of workplace health and safety and a lot of other things. But if they're an employee and they work extra time, they are entitled to the overtime. So you've got to be careful that you don't do it, because they will have good grounds then to go to the Fair Work Commissioner and say that I have not been getting paid correctly.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting more questions. I'm going to have to wrap us up shortly. Quickly, do we use timesheets for not-for-profits as well? I presume so, yes?
Yes, I recommend that, because it doesn't matter whether you're not-for-profit, whatever you are. I used to be a chairman of a not-for-profit, and they didn't have timesheets, and the cleaners and the people, it was a residential college at a university. I was horrified when I went in and found, because they weren't aware of all their HR obligations. And when we started putting in timesheets and paying people correctly, the culture just changed. It was phenomenal. So I reckon you need to, I know it sounds time consuming. I know it's, extra work, but it really, really contributes to the overall running of the business, and it's, moving forward.
Right, Graham, thank you very much. Oh, great, thank you. Tanya, last question. Difference between employee and salary, please.
And I think everyone calls things a little bit differently. So permanent is somewhere where you're paying someone an annual salary, or permanent part-time, they have set hours. Employees, what Graham's talking about, is more casual or contract. So I would again refer to Fair Work with that. But in terms of working overtime, if they're working on an hourly rate and you're paying them casually, you have to pay them for overtime. With salary, just to go back to the other question, it has to be within reasonable hours too. So I think, for one of the awards for my team here, it's 38 to 40 hours per week within reason. At the same time, your processes and systems need to be set up as well, so you're not working, extensively too. But I know Caitlin wants to wrap up. So if there's any other questions, you can just reach out to us or Caitlin, and we're happy to answer.
Thanks, Tan. All righty. Thank you so much valuable information there. What I'm going to do now is just to direct you all. Again, these are links that I'm going to include in our wrap-up email, along with the recording of the sessions today. So wealth of information available on the Business Queensland website. Obviously, this Ask a Mentor segment features on there, as well as other information around workforce planning. You can also register for our upcoming webinars and events. And last but not least, if you need any further assistance with your business, you're more than welcome to register for a free Mentoring for Growth session. I'll include the relevant links to you in our wrap-up email. And thank you so much to our wonderful mentors for providing such wonderful wisdom and insights. It's such a hard thing to navigate. So I feel like there was a lot of ground there made for our business owners. So thank you so much. And thank you to our attendees for taking the time out of your busy schedules on a Monday morning to come along. I hope you all have a wonderful day.